Welcome back, folks. It's time for another one of our talks. And this next one, I can get behind. I'm joined by Luca because we're going to talk about retiring accountability and commitment. And Luca, first of all, I'm just going to say I can get behind this, okay? As a guy who always gets the blame for leaving the lights on in the house, I'm 100% behind getting rid of accountability.
Thank you very much. And that's what we talk about today. And uh, connected to accountability and commitment, there is the way that we look at work and
Yeah.
how to get it done. And so this is the session for today.
Yeah, and just to highlight to people, what we're going to be doing is we're going to actually pose the question to you guys for the first few minutes for you to answer. Should we retire accountability? We're going to give you a few options. We want you to actively vote because we'll be kind of discussing the outcome as the presentation goes on.
Good. So let's start with an introduction about myself. My name is Luca Minudel. My accent is giving it away. I'm Italian, not British like our host. And I have a technical background in software development. I spent the last 20 years in software delivery and development. All of them, or most of them, with lean, agile way of working and complexity thinking. During my career, I gradually shift my focus from software development to technical coaching and later into mentoring and coaching managers, executives from the tech and the product and business side of the organization. So I kind of call my stack a full stack consultant and advisor in lean, agile, and complexity. I'm quite active on social media, Mastodon, LinkedIn, Twitter, and my blog. Sometimes I write some articles, and these are some of my publications. The orange one is the latest book on practical application on human complexity. So I think enough about me. I had a lot of conversation with people from many different organizations, very small and very big organizations, startup and mature companies. I talk with software engineers, team members, managers, and business owners, and I ask them, should we retire accountability and commitment? But most of all, I had conversation with them. I listen about their own stories. I researched the topic, what people online said and wrote about this. And now I want to share with you my finding. Starting to say that all the answers, more or less, are split into these three groups. Someone say, "Damn right, let's get rid of it." Someone say, "Over my dead body," and a smaller part is not sure about this. So this left me with three questions. Where do accountability and commitment works? And when they stop working, why they stop working and become toxic? Why people want so hard get rid of them? And is there an alternative? Is there a good alternative to it? So this is the time to have a pool. I would like to hear what you think about that, and I would like to ask the host to kindly post the question on the chat. And with the like, you will vote which of the answer are your answer. Please
Yeah.
go ahead.
So we'll give people a sec to kind of get into that and start voting that. I mean, I feel like there's a subtle trick in this by the fact that one is written in blue and one's written in red. Luke, I feel you might be leading us on a little bit, but we'll see where people vote.
I'm open to all the answers, and I'm very curious with those that disagree with me. So
Yeah.
feel free
So
to
there's a slightly building for over my dead body. Interestingly enough, there are a few people in the other two pens. There are a few people believing damn right, and people also just not really sure where to go so far. Um, I have a feeling that we aren't gonna. I don't want to say we're not gonna like the over my dead body people, but that I feel that they're the ones you're here to convince today.
That's right. Should we go ahead? Do
I,
you
I
have
think
a
so. We've got a
Yes,
lot of people basically either not sure or looking to fight you right now. So I think what I'll do
that's
is
good.
I'll hop off screen and I'll let you take this fight yourself, Luca. You be the champion.
Sounds great. Sounds great. You are my audience then. So, what I noticed talking with this group of people is that both sides of this argument have an hard time in understanding each other or in changing their mind. And I was struggling. Why this polarization? Why people that want to get rid of accountability and commitment cannot understand those that instead want to keep using them and the other way around? What's going on? And then someone explained to me that beside the meaning of those terminology, the way that people attach meaning to those words is not through a dictionary, but is based on their history and past experience, the way that they experience accountability and commitment, the way that those terms has been translated into practice in their organization, and the way people make sense of things when something goes wrong. So two people cannot find an answer to our questions just trying to share a common definition or looking at the dictionary definition of the terms. The context, the history play a much important role. So what is the context here? Well, there are three elements. The customer and the stakeholder play a huge role. And then there is the relationship between the customer and those doing the work inside the organization, manager, business owner, and the team doing the work. And then there is another element, an important one, the nature of the work that we are dealing with that can change each time. So all this plays a big role in how people answer the initial question. That's what I discovered. And here is my first learning then. Clarifying or redefining the definition of accountability and commitment won't change anything in this conversation if we should retire them or not, because that won't change the history or the surrounding context and culture of the problem. So let's start from the nature of the work and look at these few examples. Imagine you are customers that are going to buy these things. In all these cases, all these goods, the outcome that you are going to get when you buy those goods is predefined, is well understood and known in advance. There are no surprises when you are trying to buy something like this. Any possible problem, any mistakes can be absorbed by the margins of the company. Imagine that there is a degree of uncertainty of the outcome. For example, the team have to throw a dice and you as a client want an even number. Well, the team just need to throw the dice twice and on average they will always get an even number for you. This can be done, right? It works. Now, let me stress again the type of work that we are talking about is pretty standard product and service. As a customer, you could choose the product and service that you want from a menu because you know exactly what you are asking for and what you will get. Problem, risks can all be inferred from past experiences. The process, the production process, the business model, the pricing, the volume of the clients, they bake into margin any possible problems that can come up. And so what you get as a customer is an absolute guarantee. Think about you're ordering that t-shirt from Amazon. There is a warranty for the carrier. There is a warranty from Amazon. There is a warranty from the company that is producing the t-shirt. And if something is not right, you can get your money back. So you have an absolute guarantee. Risk is managed through predictability and proven mitigation plan. So when you can meet customer expectation as a company and as a team, absorb any problem into the margin and do this again and again, then this is the sweet spot of accountability and commitment. Those that say, I don't want to retire accountability and commitment over my dead body, those people have experienced this sweet spot. Well, sometimes there are problems in a project or a delivery initiative. But when the team and the company can get better at forecasting and managing risk, when they can increase the margins so they can absorb more problems, and when they can get better working harder and better, then they can get back into the sweet spot. And here again, those that want to continue using accountability and commitment are exactly in this sweet spot. In order to commit and be accountable, you need the team to be capable, to be willing to do the work that is needed, and those doing the work need to be empowered to take care of the related responsibility, and they need to have enough control of the dependencies. If you cannot do this, you cannot effectively commit and be accountable. Let's talk more about this later. But now we have our learning number 2. There is a type of work where accountability and commitment, as most people understand them, just works well. This type of work, I call it business as usual, repetitive work, like work that has low variation and very little surprises and novelty. Someone call it standard work. David Marquette call it red work, or we can call it complicated work, as in complexity science. So what to do when there is more uncertainty and ambiguity in the work that we do? What to do when the risks and the problem that we had in the past doesn't help us to predict and forecast the risk and the problem that we can have right now in this new project? What to do when the margins and the volume cannot make up for problems that we may face? This typically happen when when you're working on a new project, a new product for the first time, when we are doing something unique, a one-off or heavily customized type of product and service. In this situation, it's not clear what is needed and how to get it done right. Risks and unexpected problems cannot be predicted or quantified, and there are no enough margins in the price for the client, or the client cannot pay more, or the business cannot lose money to solve those problems. So this is really a difficult situation. Can you commit on estimate and timeline? No, you cannot. Imagine you were a broker. Would you commit to your client that the stock price will always rise? No, there is ambiguity, uncertainty of what problem to solve, and that make it impossible to commit upfront. Does accountability and commitment solve the problems in this situation? No, the fixed margin don't leave enough room to solve the problems once it happens. And the result is that when a problem come up, not the team doing the work, not the customers has a way out. They are cornered. Imagine that you are doing a sprint and you have to deliver 3 things. But then during the sprint, things don't go as expected and you deliver 3 things, or even 0 because it was an experiment and it failed, and you cannot find a way out. Even if the team did everything right, accountability and commitment won't help you there. And very likely we will get into blame game. So we have 3 additional learning here, 3 additional point in the end. When you also don't have the margin, there are too many uncertainty and the unknowns cannot be eliminated, accountability and commitment stop working. We cannot commit and be accountable here. So when this happen, when this situation where accountability and commitment stop working happen, well, one of the example that we had before is buying a t-shirt on Amazon. But what if you have to buy a bespoke wedding dress with a complete new fabric, a complete design, the templates that the tailor has doesn't work, and we don't know how the fabric will behave once we create the dress, and we don't know if it will look good on you. So what do we do? Should we increase the margin? That will be too much. The level of uncertainty cannot be covered by the margin anymore. Can we ask the team, if you are a customer and we want a 6 on the dice, can we ask the team to throw the dice 6 times, so in average we will get what we want? That's not affordable. That will be too expensive. So that's the next learning. There is a different type of work where accountability and commitment, in the way that we understand and practice them, stop working. They leave the team and the customer confusing, and when there is a problem, they create a conflict, usually hurting those that have less power, because those are the ones that will be blamed typically. And those are the people that would like to retire accountability commitment because it's not working well for them. This type of work, someone called them novel work, ad hoc work, blue work, David Marquette call it, or in complexity science, we call it complex work. For this complex work, we need to do 3 things to get this done, to solve the problem effectively. 3 things that need to be done together at the same time. We need to adopt a different approach to managing risks. We need to leave behind blame games and clarify what we need to do to create trust between those doing the work and the customer, so we can focus on solving the real problem. And then we need a way of working that is a good fit for this type of complexity. Now I'm gonna talk about 3. I will dig deeper in these 3 points. Point number 1, managing risk. With complex work, our ability to know from the past experience which problem to expect is fundamentally limited. Think about when the distribution of probability of huge impact event make it impossible to invest money in order to prevent all those events. What do you do? Or when there are situations where you cannot even effectively forecast the possible problem. Now, in this situation, you need to do something different to manage risk through empirism. That it means making experiment without knowing what the result will be, learning while doing the work, steering and adapting as we go, and knowing that we may need to change a scope, deadline, or budget, and we may have to accept that what we are trying to achieve, what the customer asks us to do, is not feasible in the way that the customers want it. So now let's look at point number 2, building trust, a way to create a trust so that we can focus on solving the real problem. With complex work, it may happen that everyone is doing a great job, and still at the end of the sprint, the increment will only have 3 things instead of the 10 that has been promised. And this is where the real problems usually start, even worse when it's an experiment and we have 0 things delivered. So that's why with complex work it's not possible to commit to estimate and deadline and be accountable for uncertain predefined outcome. That is not possible. Manager and customer at this point may wonder if the problem is with those doing the work. Why we had the problem? Why has this failed? Why we only get 3 things out of 10? Why this project is not going in a successful direction? Has the team been being naive, not working smart enough? Are they unprofessional, falling behind professional standard? Are they lazy, not doing their best? Well, the expected result instead may be because of the novelty, the unknowns, the uncertainty, the unexpected change that come with the type of work that we are dealing with. So we need to set expectation with the customers about those doing the work and how we can make sure that they are smart, good at their job, and that they are actually doing their best. And this is what we call being dependable and trustworthy. So we need to make clear that the expectation toward those that are doing the work are these, for them to be dependable and trustworthy. While using a different terminology, why can't we use accountability and commitment? Well, since the most common understanding of accountability and commitment is connected with the iron triangle of project management, with the fixed deadline, fixed scope, and fixed price. And this, as we saw just before, works well only for business as usual, standard, red, or complicated work. When we have to deal instead with complex work, novelty, unknown, uncertainty, unexpected change, we need to move away from the iron triangle. And in order to do that, we need to have a conversation around this new way of thinking, and we need to discuss things about a new approach. So that's why using different terminology allow us to have this conversation with the customer, between the customer and the team, and also with managers and stakeholders. Now, the third and last point that is fundamental to successfully cope with the complex work is to have a way of working that is fit for that. This, what I'm sharing with you now, is inspired by the promise theory by Mark Burgess. And the focus now is on the work to do and the customer. So in the traditional approach, we will have a big upfront plan where we commit upfront on the estimate, price, and so on. But we need an empirical approach to accelerate learning. We need to break down the initial plan into multiple bets and experiment. Working in iteration in small bets and experiment, deliver information at the end of every bets and experiment, and all data points made up for our lost ability to forecast the risk and the probability. The other element is that the customers and those doing the work need to co-create and share responsibility on the work to do, specifically on which task we want to do next, which experiments, which bets we want to do, and which priorities. Co-creation means synchronous collaboration, shared artifacts, and real-time interaction. And most of all, the shared responsibility between the team and the customer and the customers. They need to share responsibility, and the need and the works and wants of the customer need to be embedded in the decision that the teams will take. Another element is that both the team, those doing the work, and the client need to be free to accept or refuse the next iteration without a retribution if they refuse to. The team needed to be free to accept, yes, I want to go on with the next iteration, or say, no, I think that's completely wrong. It's a granted failure. I want to stop. The client also have the ability to say, yes, let's go on. No, I'm not happy anymore. Or I'm happy, we already have achieved our goal. This voluntary aspect will allow two additional information to emerge. So we will know if something is unwilling or unable to do the work or pay for the work. And this is fundamental information when we are dealing with complex work. So co-creation is fundamental. If we don't co-create, as you see on the left side, we will find ourselves into a different point of view, different reality. We won't understand each other. Instead, when we work together, we have a common experience. through our attention that is closer to each other, we end up on having a better common understanding of the things. The third element of the way of working that is fit for complexity is using feedback loop in order to test and sustain trust between the team and the customer. Every time that we co-create an experiment, then we accept to work on that, and we get the result and learning from the work, whether it succeed or it fail. And this feedback loop tell us every time if you are really homing in on the designer outcome. We may have failed, but with that failure, we are getting closer to the result that we wanted or not. And through this frequent loop, the customers learn if they can trust the company and the team learn if they can trust the customer. And trust is fundamental when dealing with complexity and uncertainty and unknown. Look, we discussed about this way of working, but there are implicit assumptions on this empirical way of working that I shared with you. There are implicit assumptions that cannot be an afterthought. Customer centricity, the customer need to come before the stakeholder, and the decisions that the team make need to put the customer at the center. Teamwork, the teamwork need to come before the goal of optimizing individual performance, and cross-functional collaboration need to come before individual functions efficiency. So people at this point usually ask, okay, we have all those tools to deal with complex work, to check if we can trust each other, to see if things are working or not. But how do you handle a situation when things go wrong, when you are dealing with complexity? So here it is. For those doing the work, there is a list of collaboration and technical practices that they have to follow always. There is a detailed description and definition. So this list of technical practices is an agreement for teams and managers on the practices that do have to follow in order to be dependable and trustworthy. I had the list of these while I was working in a Ferrari Formula One racing team, and we had the list of technical practices that we had to follow as a team. For the customer, there is also a list of collaboration practices that they have to follow because that is what is expected from the customer in order to be involved with the process. And this list is included in the contract, like the list before. We had this when I worked with ThoughtWorks, and this was included in ThoughtWorks contracts with the customer. So we could partner with our customers and deal with complexity. Every complaint is investigated against those lists and is normally dealt during, for example, a retrospective demo review or in one-on-one ad hoc meetings when needed. Every major incident in production or with the product is investigated against those lists. And only if there is a breach of those lists, a person can be fired or a contract can be canceled. But surprise, surprise, what happened in my experience is pretty different. This list of things, expected technical practices and collaboration practices for the team and the customer, actually helped the team members resist cutting corners when they were put under pressure. So they started to avoid the worst technical debt and avoided to take technical risk when pushed by managers or others, or when they were under pressure. Some team members felt that it was safer to experiment within the perimeter given by the list, because it doesn't matter if the experiment failed as long as you followed your professional standard. And even the customers in the end were happy. a new customer may feel, oh, you are asking me to collaborate more, to be there more time than I'm used to. I will only like to come at the end and get the work done at the end, but now you're asking me to work with you. And some customer may think, oh, that's more work for me. But in the end, this list clarified the rule of the game, and this gave them more control on the contract and the outcome. So even the customers in the end were happy. After all this work that I did on accountability and commitment, and on with the alternative that I just presented you, I realized that there were already a lot of things out there that were based on the three things that I shared with you to deal with complex work. In extreme programming, for example, we have accepted the responsibility for the voluntary element. We have user stories that included the social element of a co-creation of the next experiment or bet together with the customers. And we have the planning game that, again, with the customer, we share responsibility to set the priorities. And then the agile retrospective prime directive. Many people that is less experienced with agile thinks that it's about hugging trees, being happy and love each other. But actually, the prime directive of the retrospective is about recognizing the empirical nature of the work that we are dealing with. And finally, the second value of the Agile Manifesto point out to customer collaboration. That is exactly what we need to do to build trust and to home in our complex endeavor. So you see that some of these concepts were already backed into the work that we were already doing. Okay, we are coming close to the end of the presentation, and soon we are getting into the Q&A. So let's sum up what we have seen. We have identified two types of work. One type of work, the red one, red work, standard business as usual or complicated work, and novel work, ad hoc work or blue work, complexity work. Call it as you like. Two types of work. Actually, between the two, there is a continuum. It's not red or blue. There are different degrees of this type of work. You also have to be aware that people that spend most of the time professionally on one side, they will tend to think that all the work is like that. People that spend most of the professional life on the other side, they will tend to think that all the work is like that. So it may be hard at the beginning to make a right assessment of the type of work that we are dealing with in order to avoid using the wrong approach. So both approach, accountability and commitment, and the other element, or dependability and trustworthiness, and all the other elements that I shared with you, work well in their right context with the right type of the work. Pushing accountability and commitment where they don't work for blue work, complex work, will lead to blame games and frequent failure. But at the same time, pushing dependability, trustworthiness, and empirical approach to work with the standard work will lead to inefficiency and will be more expensive for the customer and the organization. Now, if you are in software and digital product development, it is worth saying that most of the work in that space tend to be complex work, leaving accountability and commitment only for a limited number of products and services that has been already commoditized and standardized. So here we have the final learning, number 5. There is a different type of work where something other than accountability and commitment are needed. And what is needed is an empirical approach to risk management. we need that those doing the work to be trustworthy and dependable, and we need a new way to collaborate that is fit for complexity, and that this is what we need for complex type of work. So I mentioned that in order to come to the conclusion that I shared with you, I mentioned that I use finding from Promise Theory by Mark Burgess, and also for the social element from the Inviting Leadership book of Daniel Mesick. I also mentioned to you before that uh, it is important to assess the type of work that you are dealing with, because people normally tend to see all the work to be the type that they are more comfortable with. And in this book, on region number 2 of this book, there are a set of practices that allow you to assess the degree of complexity of a work, knowing if you are closer to the red side or the blue side type of work. And these are a set of useful links that you can follow up. So let me see if we have our host with us.
Hey, Luca.
Oh, there you
So
are.
yeah, so guys, if you have questions for Luca, now's the time to post them in the Q&A section, and I will relay them to him. Interesting talk there, Luca. Really insightful. One thing that kind of struck me is, that this is obviously the type of thing that you probably learn through some sort of personal experience with it, right? That kind of question mark about what sort of system we need. Have you got like a kind of maybe a eureka moment, like an experience you had in business that made you realize that you needed to figure out what type of philosophy worked?
Yeah, my background comes from computer science. I studied computer science from a mathematical branch uh, and so we created the interpreters and computers starting from defining numbers. I could control everything, have everything defined. And then during the internet era, the technology was changing so fast that I couldn't control everything. I started to face novelty. Things were constantly changing. And so that is where I started to realize that the traditional approach of controlling, of using forecasting was not working anymore. And that is where my journey started. But it has took a long, long time to come to what I'm telling you today, to be able to express, to point out where is the problem, to connect it with the theory has been a 20 years journey.
Yeah, I guess the point is that you're trying to emphasize to people, instead of just me being able to list off X, Y, Z, which you try to do, right? Ad hoc work versus complex versus complicated work. There is a feel for it, right? You have to experience it yourself to kind of work out and flag these points. I guess my point there is that you're trying to provide the tools to identify what your situation is versus just kind of saying this is your situation.
Yeah, you need to experience that. You cannot just be told. Someone can give you a hint, and you will experience when you start to when you are used to standard work and you start to face complex work. You start to see that there are unexpected event, a failure that you cannot explain, or you think you have found the explanation. You repeat, and the failure come up again, or you start to forecast the risk, you start to take preventive measure, you start to define more the requirement, and then something unexpected happen again.
Yeah, and I think it's that idea of like we heard it in one of the talks earlier today. This whole concept of being humble, right? Our opening speak was about being willing to make failures a part of your journey, right? Accepting them and learning from them. I guess that's kind of a big element of this, right? Like you're not going to be right, all the time, but the importance is regularly reviewing, right? You talked about this idea of feedback loops, right? Regularly reviewing what you're doing and figuring out whether it was right or wrong. Do you have kind of like a way of gauging how often you as an organization should be doing those type of feedback loops, or do you think it's too situational to each independent situation?
Well, it change. The more unknown and uncertainty there is, the more often you wanted to have feedback loop. Imagine that you want to invest money. If you are not sure, you will start with the little sum and you will test the water. If you know exactly what you're getting, you will get all in. So you have to find the measure. That's one criteria. The other criteria is how much the stakeholders and the customers are nervous. So if you have many frequent loop, you can fail 3 times, but then you succeed the 7th time and trust is established.
Mm.
But if you do it 2 times and 1 time you fail and 1 time you succeed, that's not enough to establish trust. I adopted the modern way of working at the beginning where people were not used to that. You couldn't explain to them the way of working that you were using because they thought it was just crazy. So the only way for me to work in a way that was fit for purpose is to deliver frequently enough so that they say, okay, I don't understand which craft they are doing, but I see that they are delivering and I can trust them. And after I trust them, we can have a conversation. Okay, explaining to me the crazy things that you are doing and why they work. And instead, everyone else is failing. But in order to do that, you need to have many small bets frequent. So you can fail sometimes, but most of the time, people will get the sense that you are homing in.
Okay. And one thing that I know she talked about was this: that responsibility must be shared between the client and the organization. Is there kind of a worry that the organizations usually have, I want to say, like a position of authority there, right? Like typically clients and users will just go with whatever the other side is saying because you assume that they know best, right?
So this is also the client need to be aware of this approach and make a good use of it. In my experience, and I heard other people say that when you buy a lot of Amazon T-shirt or standard spare part for your car, you will expect the company to tell you like a menu what do you need and give you the right things for you, and you will get used to that. But the first time that you start buying a wedding dress, a tailor-made fashion wedding dress, or you start developing a part of a Formula One car, you start doing things as before and you fail and fail again. As a client, you start to wonder, how do I get this? And this is when you may find an organization that say, look, that's the way of doing it, let's start to collaborate together, let's do this bit together, tell me what you need, would you rather have this or that, this is the cost and the benefit for this, and these are the cost and the benefit for that, which experiment do you want to try first, what is the most important part for you, what is the biggest unknown that we need to clarify now.
Got it.
And that's how the client click. There are smart clients that understand that and you want to work with them. There are those that say, no, I want to do like Amazon t-shirt. That's fine, but it doesn't work with what you're trying to build now. It's a different beast.
Yes, the complexity argument that we were talking about before, right? Exactly. I think that is everything we have for now, though. I'm just gonna pop this quickly back up on screen, though. If you guys do want to reach out to Luca, you can see he's a very conversational person. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to answer any message you may have. But Luca, I think that's all we've got time for. I think everyone's getting a little bit hungry because it is time for a lunch break. So thank you very much for joining us. A very tantalizing talk, and I look forward to hearing more from you in the future.
Thank you and bye to everyone.
Okay, guys. So now we are going to be hopping into our lunch break. You got like about an hour to go get yourself some food, but beware, don't go too far. Don't go astray for too long, because we will return after the break with more talks from more very knowledgeable folks. So don't miss out, and I'll catch you very soon.
This is all we got. Remember the revolution in our minds. This is all we got.
Lock me out of this life institution. I am angry and I am illusions. Yes, I hate, but it's not a solution. Try my best, but I'm just a human. Oh, we don't need to say we're